Paul Zimmerman. I'm the COO of a company called Invotra. Invotra powers a lot of intranets for UK Gov, large departments, many with tens of thousands of employees or civil servants. And this is a subject to us that's kind of hit us hard in the last year, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why. So we're talking about user experience for the 100%. Or another way to look at it is making your intranet accessible to everyone. And before I begin, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think anyone has actually mentioned the word accessibility yet this morning. So where's Lisa? I'm looking for Lisa. But it's quite possible. You did. Okay, good. I thought you did. I thought there was one. I thought it was you, sir. Thank you very much. So I think that's really interesting. Because with the exception of that gentleman over there in the corner on the left, we're not really talking about this as a subject. And this is something to deal with, okay? So, user experience for the 100%. What does accessibility mean to you? Okay? We talk about our intranets being accessible, but are they? We say that they're compliant with AA standards, or maybe even AAA standards. What does that even mean? Let's talk about some definitions. I'll throw some definitions on the wall and you can have a look at them. Okay, so accessibility definition. One way to describe what accessibility means is that it is the quality or characteristic of something that makes it possible to approach, enter, or use. Now, many of us in the audience here would say that we're UX fans, we like wireframes, we like designing good intranets, right? But then that's interesting because actually accessibility is using the word use, so then we must be forced to look at the definition of usability. Usability, the fact of something being easy to use or the degree to which it is easy to use. And again, let's go to the standards. So these standards that people talk about, AA standards, AAA standards, what are they? Well, there's four sort of key tenets of compliance, which are that you should be, your intranet or your site should be perceivable. They should be operable. They should be understandable. And they should be robust. Well, that's all well and good. But what do we mean by that? Is it for all users? Is it for back-end users as well, so your admins? Who manages your intranets, and do they have accessibility challenges with the way that your intranet is managed? Is it for most of the people in the head office, or is it for everyone? And what precisely do you mean by that? It's kind of easy to tick the box of compliance. And we thought we were doing pretty well ourselves at Invotra. Right? Until about last year, we had one of our larger customers with more than 85,000 users. They said to us, we believe you. We think and believe that you're compliant to AA. Okay? But you know what we'd like you to do? We would like you to go meet our users who are partially blind, fully blind, and we'd like you to sit down with them and actually experience what they go through. And so we did that. We went to Preston, we went to York, we went to Leeds, Blackpool, and London, and we've met with users who've got accessibility challenges. And we were kind of shocked, right? So our product, we were AA, and we were proud of ourselves. And then we realized after having had our butts kicked, basically, by this customer, that actually we had a lot of work to do. And now what we do is we've basically reinvented ourselves on the subject of accessibility. We invited a W3C champion into our business, and she sat down with us. She also is an advisor to GDS. And she sat down with us and she said, you know what? You're doing great. 9 out of 10 for effort. This is before we made any changes. 6 out of 10 on your product. But the good news is that SharePoint is about a 3 out of 10. So we were pleased. But we've put a huge amount of effort in the last 6 months or so into embracing accessibility. And particularly to us, what that means is talking about an accessibility experience. So at the outset I said user experience for the 100%. That's what I mean by this, AX, creating an accessible experience. We start thinking about this differently. This is not just accessibility over on the far side, we deal with it, it's the last thing that we deal with at the end of the day. Actually, we've talked about a lot of other stuff. We come to accessibility at the very end. This is actually designing at the very front end your intranet or your digital workplace so that it is accessible for everyone. Okay, so we'd like to do something here. We'd like to encourage you to put yourself in the shoes of your users. So this is the time in the presentation where you're going, what are those things in the middle of the table? These are night masks. We obviously got them for today. We'd like to encourage you to put those on. And just whilst you're doing that, the point is here that we want to encourage you to use your ears. And what we'd like you to do is now to think. And firstly, for those of you who do not experience this, your senses are heightened. Obviously, aside from your sight, you're probably picking up a lot of other things that you wouldn't normally pick up on. And we'd like to encourage you now to think about trying to navigate online to buy a gift for somebody. And maybe you go to a well-known e-commerce site and you're looking for a gift. And Ed, I hope we're ready. And I'm going to now give you the experience of somebody who uses a screen reader on a regular basis.
Coupons and more, 9 of 94. To move to items, use the arrow keys. Enter. eBay-Google search. eBay:/electronics, cars, fashion, collectibles, coupons and more. Heading level 3 link visited. Electronics, cars, fashion, collectibles, coupons and more. Vertical bar eBay. eBay:/electronics, cars, fashion, collective search but hello. Tab, sign in link. Tab, red tab, daily tab, sell link. Tab, my tab, next tab, notification, shift tab, following tab, expand tab, fashion link. Tab, expand fashion as pop-up link. Shift tab, help, shift tab, advanced shift tab, search button, shift tab, select the call, shift tab, enter your search keyword, edit, B-R-T-H-A-D, enter, search button.
Okay, now keep them on. Now what you've heard there is somebody going to Google, looking up a card, a birthday card, and then navigating to, again, a well-known website, which I probably won't name. You may have been able to discern what it was. Navigating through categories, tabbing through categories. And that's a screen reader experience. And by the way, that's a pretty average speed. And the reason I've asked you to keep your masks on for a second is because actually you need to think about not being fluent. You're not fluent in this language, okay? I want you to think about being really, truly fluent in this language, and I'm going to call it a language because when I first experienced this, I thought, oh, okay. This is actually somebody who's very fluent, and this is probably around 300 words, 400 words per minute, versus 100 to 150 words per minute on the last one.
Tab, Google, Explorer, enter, Google. Form mode. Heading list, search results, to 1 of 23, to move items, use the arrow keys. Heading list dialog, heading list, search results, to 1 of 23, to move items, use the arrow keys. eBay:/electronics, cars, fashion, collectibles, coupons and more, gold 3, enter. Visit heading level 3 link, eBay:/electronics, cars, fashion, collectibles, coupons and more, enter. eBay:/electronics, cars, fashion, collectibles, coupons and more, heading level 3 link visit. Electronics, cars, fashion, collectibles, coupons and more, vertical bar eBay, eBay:/electronics, frame container updated, press enter for form mode. Tab, select the category of the search combo box, all categories, 1 of 36, insert one L, to change the selection, use, tab, search button. Shift tab, enter your search keyword, edit, type of text. R-T-H-T-A, watch space, T-A-R-T. Tab, search button, enter.
There you go. Thank you very much. You can take your masks off. And thank you very much for participating. And I want to tell you that when I first heard that, I was incredulous. I was like, no way. There's no way that somebody actually listens to a screen reader that quickly. And our expert said to us, oh, yes, we do. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, actually, when I look at an intranet or I look at a website, how many nanoseconds does it take for my eyes to render what's happening on that website? No time at all. You look at a website, for those of you who have sight, right? You look at a website and you can discern within seconds, nanoseconds, you can discern where you are. And if you have to use a screen reader, then you are usually going to be that fluent as well. And so it takes a lot to adjust your attitude in terms of where you are with this as a intranet manager, a knowledge manager, or a content person, okay? I would encourage you to think like this. How many words does it take to hear a page, right? So that's an interesting subject. We suddenly are thinking differently about how our content is created, right? And if you don't believe us, go talk to users who do, right? Ask them to demonstrate it to you. Go talk to somebody. We've got some very big companies here. I've heard this morning household names like PwC, Shell, Skanska, large corporations. And you will definitely have, throughout any size of organization, be it big or small, you'll have users who've got accessibility challenges. So go ask them, sit down with them, talk to them about their experiences, right? And they will show you, demonstrate to you what they go through. The question of responsibility is an interesting one. We debated about this in our company, in our office the other day. Whose responsibility is it anyway? This subject of affecting this, changing this attitude. In fact, actually meeting the accessibility challenges. You could argue that actually this is somebody else's job. That this is the internet provider. It could be Microsoft's job if you're SharePoint. And by the way, I'm not SharePoint, so I don't really care about them. But a lot of you guys are, right? Is it Microsoft's responsibility? And the answer is, the way we think about this is actually, imagine you've got an old woman who's going to cross the street. She needs help crossing the street. There's no one else around. You see her. She sees you. And you are the one who's going to help her across the street. The reality is that it is you who can make your content better. Okay? You've got that responsibility. You can do that. You can make your content better. We talk about this. Content is king. That is very true. But also, context is very important too, right? Now imagine a colleague who's in a wheelchair, and she comes into your building, and you direct them to the hallway down the end where the stairs are. Okay? In reality, what you needed to do was direct them the exact opposite way down the hallway to where the lift was. That's context, based on who that is, based on who's coming to your internet and using it and why. Okay, let's play a quick interactive game. We've got a picture on the screen of George Washington. We've got some content here underneath that. And we'd like to describe or talk about basically what is the alt text you should use for this image. Firstly, real quickly, I'll read out the content. It says, because of his role as the Commander-in-Chief of American forces in the Revolutionary War, and later the first President of the United States, George Washington is often called the father of his country. And so the question is, what's the alt text that we should put there? Right. Is it A, an image of George Washington, or B, George Washington, comma, the first President of the United States, C, an empty alt attribute, nothing. You don't need to put anything in there. Or D, George Washington. Hands up if you think it's A. Great. Hands up if you think it's B. Good. C, an empty alt attribute. Few. Good. Excellent. And D, George Washington. Fairly even split. And the reality is, it's probably D, George Washington, for a couple of reasons. You don't need to say to somebody with accessibility challenges that actually is a picture. They'll be able to figure that out. Okay? Now, if it is actually a portrait, like a painting or something like that, then there's context there, and you probably want to say that. Okay? But for right now, you don't necessarily need to say that. But there are other things here about that content that you've just heard or read that actually are not in here, right? Things like it doesn't describe the fact that there is actually a photo of George Washington right adjacent to the article. Okay? So that's what we mean by context. And also, let me just point out that actually, this is the respondents in our company. So 57% of the people got it wrong in our company when we asked them the same question. But actually, let me leave you with this. How do you, for internet users, how do you describe from an alt text standpoint what a pie chart is and the results? Okay? So I'll leave you with that, because actually a photograph of George Washington, or painting, fairly simple. Try using something that you use every day in your lives, in your corporate worlds. Right, what's the experience for your colleagues? I'll give you an example of something that is a real sort of bugbear. You're compliant, sure, you tick the box. If you've got drop-downs and you've got them able to be read by a screen reader, but what if you've got 1,000 items in your drop-down? This is not unheard of, by the way. Have you ever seen a really bad intranet? Hands up. Yeah. Okay, suddenly you've got more than an easy number of tabs or faceting on the left-hand side to go through, and suddenly that becomes cumbersome. So yes, you're compliant, but your accessibility experience is rubbish. Right, I'm going to skip over this because we'll talk about this in our workshop later this afternoon, but we'll come at you with we'll bring to you some tools that you can use, and we'll talk about that later. One thing I want to point out is style over substance. So we talk about this. Everyone wants a beautifully designed intranet. Really, we all do. We want something that's beautiful, gorgeous to use, friendly, easy, etc. Well, first thing, turn off your CSS. Okay? Try using your intranet from a code standpoint alone. All right? Accessibility is for everyone. That's a key message for us today. Okay, so what are some of the things that you can do? When you make your site or your intranet accessible, you're talking about tabbing getting easier, images becoming more contextual, links becoming easier to describe and decipher. So it's a win for you as much as those who've got accessibility challenges. Okay, sort of a fun list to do. What else can you do? You can unplug your mouse, only use your keyboard. Have you ever tried that, using your intranet? Okay. Try navigating using the arrow keys only. That would be fun. You could disable all styles to see the path of the screen reader. Screen readers do care about HTML. Shout out to Simon from Barclays. Try wearing boxing gloves or swimming goggles. Okay. Or shout out to our very own Lisa Reimers, who said try it after a glass of wine. Not sure about that, particularly if your wine's near your keyboard. So watch that one. Perhaps the most interesting one is ask your internet provider awkward questions, right? Like, have you used it yourself? Okay, what does that mean? How do you use your own internet product that you're giving me? Basically, how do you use it? Okay. So what are we doing? We at Invotra, we changed our entire approach. As I said, we kind of got an awakening when we actually sat with users who've got accessibility challenges. And I think the first thing I would recommend is that you change your culture from the top, okay? And that is something that I would think is fairly easy to do, okay? Now, some people say, but it's not. I can't get time with the CEO or the COO. It's very difficult, or the GM or the SVP or whatever. But accessibility, actually, when you start talking about the subject of accessibility, most people sit up and take notice, okay? It has got to change from the top. Your culture's got to change within yourselves to accept that this is something that you actually put front and center. This is not something you leave on the end and talk about at the end of the day. This is something you actually build at the beginning of your experience. So when you're talking about UX, it's not just about your mobile experience, it's your accessibility experience, right? Think about that. So that's what we did. We started to change a lot about how we thought of this ourselves. And give you an example of what we do. Every single release that we've got is, we're a SaaS model, so we release every 2 weeks, enhancements, bug fixes, security patches, etc., all that good stuff. And we've added to that accessibility enhancements. So every single release that we have, every 2 weeks, there is something in there that is going to be an improvement or an enhancement from an accessibility standpoint. Want to know more? We're around. We've got the workshop later. The stands out there. Our guys, Billy and Andrew, are going to be leading the workshop. So feel free to come see us afterwards. And that's it. I know you're starving. So thank you very much for listening. And hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.